Hello and welcome into another episode of Reality Check here over on Talking Jets. What is going on? Matt O'Leary alongside my good buddy Jets Chaos. Jeremy, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
What's going on? Enjoying some beautiful Sacramento weather. So it's a road game for me today.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when you hopped on the call, I saw the trees in the background and the sun. I said I'm very jealous. It's an overcast, kind of muggy day here on Long Island in New York. I'd like the California sun right about now.
Yeah. And I'm sitting in a barbecue place actually. So at a picnic table. This is California life. These are the pros. When you name the pros and the cons, sitting outside and eating barbecue and everything is definitely a pro.
That there's never been anything more on brand than you at a barbecue place talking Jets football. That is just, if you had to surmise Jeremy in one sentence, I think it would be that. So that's perfect. Love that. We have a lot to get into on today's episode. Want to say what's up to the chat. We got Dakota Explosive Diarrhea hanging out with us. Things you absolutely love to see. That name always makes me laugh. A couple channel members as well. Wild Wave, what's up? Knob Deep as well. And McNally wants to know what's the order. So what's the order at the barbecue place?
I got the burnt ends. You ever hear that?
Okay. Yes.
So I got the burnt ends with mac and cheese and cornbread. So delicious.
So you can't go wrong. You got a lot of good options there. We wanted to start the episode today by talking some Jordan Travis because, well, we are just recently removed from the 2024 NFL draft, and the Jets utilized one of their day 3 picks on a quarterback, Jordan Travis. And over the last couple of weeks, I feel like I've seen mixed reviews from certain Jet fans on what a realistic expectation is for Jordan Travis, not only in his rookie season, but for the entirety of his career. So I think that's what we try to tackle in the first half of the episode today is it fair or is it realistic to say that's going to be our guy after Aaron Rodgers is done?
Yeah, it's a reasonable question. I mean, it's why we took him. It's definitely the hope, right? They didn't take him because they're just for the hell of doing it. There's a hope there that he's going to be able to succeed Aaron Rodgers, but I think it's what has to be realistic. I think the reality check is definitely uh, defining failure in that. Like, in other words, if it doesn't work out, how big of a deal is that, and how angry or mad or upset should Jet fans be?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think what we have to first decide is what are you looking for out of your day 3 quarterback? And for Travis in particular, I think we could all agree whether it works or doesn't work, we'll, eventually get to that. He's in a really good situation, which is rare for a lot of at least Jets quarterbacks that we've seen drafted recently with Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold. No, there's no comparable situation to what Jordan Travis is walking into, where he has 2 pros in front of him, and Aaron Rodgers and Tyrod Taylor, so he could sit and learn. And I think that's kind of where it starts, because you have the camp that goes, the best chance for a quarterback to be successful in this league is to sit right away. And we know for a fact that Jordan Travis is going to sit to start. So I think that's where the initial thought of this guy can be the answer after is.
Yeah, I think he's going to benefit from obviously future Hall of Fame quarterback, giving him tips, teaching him on the field different things in practice. But Tyrod Taylor, being a perennial backup quarterback pretty much his entire career, helping him be a backup now, helping him be prepared, be ready to get on the field, is also really important. So I think that he's gonna benefit from both of those guys.
Yeah, he absolutely should. At that point, and that's a great thing to see. And then it's really about the next step. But we were talking before we got started here on the percent chance that you have in a late round quarterback coming in and being the guy. So do you want to talk through that exercise, and then just, I guess, we'll talk about the results that we found from that?
Yeah, so me and Tony, the GM, I want to give him some credit because shout him out because he collected the data for me a while back. Um, We counted up every single quarterback that was drafted since the year 2000. And then we went through every single name on that list to say how many of these guys ever became a relevant starting quarterback. Now, a lot of them, I'll say this because everybody starts naming them, we all know them. Guys like Kirk Cousins, Brock Purdy, there's a list of them. There's about 6 guys that I would guess I think it's about 6 guys you'd come up with. And some of them are impressive. They're an impressive 6 guys. After that, you'll be very hard to find anyone else on the list that's really been relevant at all. And when the numbers are said and done, it's about a little under, but to be fair, I'll say 4%. So any quarterback draft after the second round, third round and later, pretty much it's 4% of them have become starting relevant quarterbacks in this league. A few more have become effective backup quarterbacks though. So the percentage goes up a little bit.
Right. So that's where I think we could start to get the idea. None of us are coming on here today and saying that it's a guarantee that he is not going to be the guy, because you look and it's 96% chance of him not being the guy, because you have those the outliers, the Tom Brady's, the Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson. You run down, pick your favorite one from that group. But drafting and finding a hit at quarterback is really hard in general, as Jet fans know, because they've had their misses at the top of the draft. There was a study put out right before the draft this year. Something like 41% of quarterbacks hit in the first round. So if you're dealing with that, the 41% hit rate at the top, naturally it's only going to get more challenging and more difficult after that, especially when you see the emphasis that's put on the position, where there are, like this year, 6 quarterbacks going in the first round, or oftentimes even like 5 quarterbacks going in the first round. We saw it in 2021. We saw it in 2018, because how important it is that, for you to get that position right. So teams are more willing to take that swing on it in the first round in particular, and try to make it work, even if it's technically overdrafting the guy.
Yeah. Now there is some good news to this. There's a flip side to this too. If you look at some of those guys that were successful, there were some reasons they were overlooked. Sometimes there's like a story behind it, and the reason they were overlooked. Maybe they were in a run first offense, that they were in the wrong system. But if you looked at the film, they actually looked really good. The good news about Jordan Travis is a lot of people argue that he was a top 2 rounds projected pick, and it's only the injury that has pushed him outside the second round. So I do understand why there's more hope for Jordan Travis than the average late round quarterback draft pick.
Yeah, well, exactly. The injury definitely plays a factor, and that you could cite a specific reason why he fell, and he got hurt towards the end of the year. And, it's going to take him a little bit to get back up to speed this year, which is fine. It's expected. And that's why the Jets have, Aaron Rodgers and Tyrod Taylor in front of him. But even if Jordan Travis just ends up being on his rookie deal, he's a cheap backup quarterback option, and then maybe the Jets want to even extend him as a relatively cheap backup, not someone who's going to make $10 to $15 million a year as a backup, but just the guy who ends up being your QB2 for, I don't know, we'll just say 6 to 7 years. That's a win for a 5th round pick, and it's totally okay to say that it would be a win. Of course, we all want him to be more than that. I want nothing more than Jordan Travis to be the answer after Aaron Rodgers. What a story that would be. It makes our lives significantly easier in, who knows, 2026-ish, let's say, and beyond. But even if it's just Jordan Travis is a fine, capable backup for 5 years, that's a win for a 5th round pick.
It's an absolute win. There's no question about it. Look how badly we needed a backup quarterback this year, and how much we paid Tyrod Taylor. Look at Gary Minshew. You look at how much money these guys make. A backup quarterback is valuable. If you can, I sign up anytime for years and years of a good, solid backup quarterback, and all it costs me is every 5 or 6 years a 5th round pick.
Exactly. You would sign up for that. They tried to do that with James Morgan. It didn't exactly work out though with him. Like that's the other side of the coin. Sometimes you hit on the late round backup quarterback and the hit being like they could be your backup quarterback. Other times you end up with James Morgan, Bryce Petty, guys like that who just, unfortunately aren't even really NFL caliber quarterbacks.
Yeah, yeah, and it's more common than not. Like the majority are never even going to be backup quarterbacks. It's just the reality. There's only a very select number of people in the country at any given time that are capable of playing quarterback at the NFL level. That's just a very simple reality that any football fan comes to understand.
Absolutely. I want to see what some of the comments in here are saying. Horatio Hornblower, great name, chimes in and says, seems easy. Realistically, Travis will be on the team and in the running once AR retires. I think that's a fair way to put it. Like in the running, that you're not necessarily defining it. He can or he can't. But as of, May 9th, 2024, sure, Jordan Travis can be in the running once Aaron Rodgers is up.
Sure. I mean, that would be the hope. The hope would be nothing happens between now and the next 2 years that makes us feel he can't be the guy. That would be obviously the worst case scenario. That's the floor. That even in practice, he doesn't develop to the point where they have no belief that he could ever come in and be effective.
Right. Like, I don't want to see this happen, but we saw in 2016 when the Jets took Christian Hackenberg in the second round and he's hitting reporters on the sideline with passes in training camp. You quickly learn, oh man, like this guy's not it. And then, you see him in the preseason and it doesn't look very good. Hopefully that's not the case for him, this year. If I want to see him in training camp and the preseason, I hope he's recovered and healthy in time. But you would love to see that spark and look like, hey, like let's be excited about this guy sitting and learning in 24 and then get more excited about him going into 2025 and beyond. But there's always that chance that you just look and you get Christian Hackenberg right out of the jump. And again, it's not like you used in Hackenberg's case, that was a second round pick, a top 50 pick, if I'm not mistaken. Jordan Travis is taken in the late fifth round. At that part, like that's okay to throw your darts. And if you miss on those late dart throws, that's fine. It's really much more impactful, I guess we could say, when you miss in the first and second round.
Yeah, it definitely. I mean, it's like, and the Hackenberg, that was even worse because not only was he a second round pick that we wasted, so we lost a valuable pick, but a lot of people will argue he is the reason why we didn't draft the quarterback in 2017. And there was a couple that we could have had that are pretty significant names today in the NFL. So, it was costly.
Absolutely. Not your average show with Jordan Charles. He's hanging out with us. Says really, and a very good O-line, running backs, receivers. Zach Wilson did not have that, right? Well, I mean, he had Garrett Wilson and the running back. It was more from the perspective of a quarterback not having to come in and start right away, getting the opportunity to sit and learn, which the Jets haven't really done that since Chad Pennington. The quarterback Mark played right away, Geno played right away, and Darnold and Zach all played right away. So they haven't really drafted and stashed someone in a while.
I mean, I know a lot of people will want to blame the Jets on Zach Wilson, but the reality is, and I'll quote Green Bean here, pretty much paraphrase what Green Bean always says. Every other quarterback not named Zach Wilson on the Jets for the past 4 years combined is so much better than Zach Wilson, right? I mean, it's night and day. So we've got to stop making excuses for him. If he was as good as we were hoping he was going to be, he would have shown flashes regardless of no offensive line, regardless of a bad situation. Great quarterbacks will flash. They will show that they're great quarterbacks almost every time, almost guaranteed. We can go back in the history and look at a lot of quarterbacks that, in spite of being on a bad team, showed that they were very good. One of them, more recently, one of the best in the league before he got into a scandal, was Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Okay, he was playing for a very bad team, but it didn't stop him from shining and showing the world that he's a great quarterback, at least at that time.
No, exactly. And I think that's a good point. And not that you still missed on the second overall pick with Zach Wilson, but two things. One, nobody else from that class except for Trevor Lawrence looks any good. Like Justin Fields is in a new situation. Trey Lance is, a bust. Mac Jones bust. The whole thing. So that eases the blow. But also, it wasn't like the Jets went way out of left field with the Zach Wilson pick. A lot of people had him as QB2 in that class, or at least on a similar playing field with Fields, who unfortunately also didn't work out. So no matter what route they went drafting a quarterback in 2021, it wouldn't have worked. So you don't have to necessarily harp on that one all that much. And McNally is next. I want to pull his up. He says, depends though, because Travis dropped because of an injury. Purdy and Cousins Brady didn't drop because of the injury. So that's maybe a reason to be a little bit more positive, which was something that you referenced with talking about the reasons why the later quarterbacks could be successful.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's why I think like an example of that, but he rose up the board because people realized that they didn't realize it with Brady was, a guy like JJ McCarthy. It's like people, if you look at a box score, it's not going to look very good. But when you remember his situation and then look at him, that's the explanation of why he could potentially be a great quarterback in the NFL. Look at him in the situations where he needed to make the throws and was able to make the throws. And that goes with a lot of these players. I know that they didn't drop because of injury, but some of these guys dropped for other reasons. They have stories of why they dropped, but not even to argue, McNally is right. Sometimes it's just nobody sees it in the guy because for whatever reason, they just go undiscovered or they weren't as good in college because they didn't have the right coaching. It could be, a lot of things, but the reality is though it's 4%. So I do think that I don't want to put a number on it, but I do think that Travis has better than a 4% chance because there's a reason, because there's a story. But I'm not going to sit there and say he has an 80% chance because even in the first round, it's 41%. So we have to be really, we have to put some thought into that and understand that even if we say he has 20% chance to be a very effective starting quarterback in this league, that's pretty optimistic.
Right, exactly. And I don't want it to sound like either of us are coming on and poo-pooing Jordan Travis. That's not the case. I think we both, like the swing and we like the idea with it. There's things we like about the player. I think we're just trying our best to put a realistic lens of what could happen here, giving you all the angles on what could happen. And as Randy says here, we got the kid in the 5th. There's more upside than the Zach Wilson bust with the 2nd pick in the 1st round. I don't know. Well, I mean, there is now. At this point, now. Right. Like Zach Wilson, if you're asking me Zach Wilson now versus Jordan Travis now, I'm taking Jordan Travis now. But I don't think Jordan Travis showed enough to be a first round pick, especially with the injury. But again, there's traits that you like about this guy, which when going through the day 3 quarterbacks, the names that often would come up were Jordan Travis, Spencer Rattler, and Michael Pratt. And every time I would say with these guys, you kind of just have to find a trait that you like and hope that's what takes them to the next level. If they can't develop their game, anything else around, like for Jordan Travis, I think it's his athleticism. If his game outside of his athleticism doesn't get any better, it's not going to work out. But since he already has that athleticism built in, if he gets the other areas where he's lacking up to par, that's when he can make that leap into being a starter.
Yeah. I'll tell you what some other things I like about Jordan Travis, just to be on the more positive side.
Sure.
Aside from just the fact that he was injured, the difference between him and Zach Wilson, when I watch now, and I didn't know this at the time, when that Zachy was the first time I ever looked at all 22 college and looked at players. And I'm not trained, I never went to talent school or anything like that. Just what I could see with my eyes. What I've learned since then, and what I didn't look for back with Zach Wilson, that I look for now, that Jordan Travis is better than Zach Wilson at, is there's a lot more evidence that he can make every pass on the route tree. Whereas Zach Wilson, if you look, you can look at all his years as a professional, all his years as a college player. There's a lot of the route tree where there's no evidence he can make that pass. A lot of them are very similar types of vertical passes, and there's a lot on the route tree he is unable to make or has no evidence he can make. Whereas Jordan Travis, you can go through his tape and find that he can do everything. He could throw deep in stride. He has touch. He changes speeds on his passes. So that's an exciting thing about Jordan Travis is he can make every kind of throw, and he has that catchability in that he can adjust the speed of the ball, which makes it easier for the receivers.
Good point. Hater Ali chimes in, says, completely agree. Travis should be a contender for the quarterback. If he becomes a starter, awesome. Bridge or backup, it's a win. Either way, Jordan is entering a great situation. Right. Like, I think, and again, that kind of goes back to the point I was making with the Jets' early quarterbacks that they took, even Hackenberg, even though he never got on the field, but because he was a second-round pick, there were high expectations. And I think there's still some people with like very high expectations for Jordan Travis, and I get it. I understand why there's people excited about him, but it almost feels like anything he gives you is a bonus, where each one of the other guys was like, okay, if they're not our long-term answers at the quarterback spot, it's going to be a massive problem for this team. And that's not really the case with Jordan Travis, because if he doesn't hit, and 2 years from now, Aaron Rodgers is retiring and Tyrod Taylor is, going to sign somewhere else or retire, and like, hey, Jordan Travis, maybe we feel comfortable with him as a backup, but not really the guy. Then you go, okay, then we'll use our first round pick in 2026 on a quarterback, or sign someone else, or, go about it a different way. You're not in a catastrophic spot if this guy doesn't turn out to be anything.
No.
Harlan is back. Harlan Abraham hanging out with us. The question is, will Travis come back from his injury? Not a fan of taking players with injuries. I understand that mindset, right? Of the taking guy with an injury history is nerve-wracking. I think the Jets being a team to do that with Travis in particular, not so much Michael Penix because of his age, but with Travis, they could let him sit, and he's not he's not as old of a prospect as Michael Penix is. So he could still, a couple of years from now, take over potentially and be a quarterback. But I understand the concern with the injuries. What's your take on that?
I mean, two things. It's one, for this year, it's irrelevant. As a matter of fact, a lot of us wanted to take and thought an advantage of taking Jordan Travis this year is that we don't have to use up a roster spot. We have the option to put him on the IR if he's not ready. This way, he doesn't take up a spot on the 53. He's protected for another year without having to do that, which is a positive. Also, you got to look at the type of injury. He didn't tear an ACL. He didn't pop an Achilles. This guy broke a leg. That's, it sounds crazy to say, but that's the preferable injury. As far as healing and everything, a broken bone is much better for an athlete than a soft tissue injury. So, if it was a freak thing where he broke, it doesn't mean he's injury prone or anything. It was just a freak thing that happened. And the great thing is we know that it's going to completely heal and he'll be fine.
There we go. Drug Monkey RX. I like the name. It says, I think he's going to hit if he stays healthy. He's already way better than Zach Wilson, and he hasn't even thrown a ball in the NFL yet. LOL. Well, I hope that he is better than Zach Wilson. I really do. And again, we've talked about it a lot. I don't want to be the broken record here, but him not having any other expectation other than being QB3 this year is good for him. I like Horatio's comment with this one. He says, I think the thing that stands out the most of him is his leadership ability. If guys love you and want to play for you, I think it gives you a huge edge. From all reports, teammates adore Travis, which is an A+. That matters to me when evaluating quarterbacks. If the guy is a captain, a leader, or if he's a little bit on the more selfish side, I think that has to play a factor in the evaluation. What's your take on that?
No, it's absolutely true. Otherwise, everything you learn about leadership and everything about great leaders or bad leaders is all a lie, right? I mean, that's the whole thing that separates good leaders from bad leaders or great leaders from just average leaders is the people that you're leading give more for you. They're there for you and they're better prepared for you. So absolutely, like I'd be very worried if I was the Chicago Bears when you have players were already giving him warnings about how he needs to behave and think before he even got drafted. So that's a lot more concerning. So yeah, I think it's very, very important. And it's one of the best things that our organization does. Like if you say what are the positives of what our organization has done in the past 4 years, bringing in players that also are leaders, I think is a very positive thing that's going to help us moving forward.
I'm with you on that. Loved our coverage today on Jordan Travis. I think we did a pretty good job of explaining what a good expectation should be. But we had another topic today that I wanted to get into with you, Jeremy. Is some are talking about Tyler Conklin as a weakness on this roster, or that tight end in general is a weaker spot. Do you view Tyler Conklin as a starting tight end as a weak point on this Jets team?
Absolutely not. I'm not going to say he's a star. Like he's not Kelsey, he's not Kittle, he's not a guy where you say it's the strength of our team, but he's not a weakness. And you know, this is not a knock against Brock Bowers. The reality is, this this became an issue for Jet fans because people wanted Brock Bowers and were putting down the tight ends we had to justify taking it. Now the reality is, you don't need to put Tyler Conklin down to justify taking a Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers was a potential upgrade, no matter who your tight end is, with the exception of 4 or 5 guys in the league. So to have to say that Tyler Conklin is a weakness to justify picking a potential superstar tight end is just not necessary. And I want to start by saying, if Brock Bowers was what didn't exist, I don't think you would have heard any Jet fan calling tight ends, you know, a position of weakness or a position of need.
I think that's a great point. And as we said, you go back and watch the videos, as we said, all throughout the draft process, if the Jets drafted Brock Bowers, it's not necessarily saying that Tyler Conklin's a problem. It's, okay, this guy's a unique kind of player we could add to our offense and use with a Tyler Conklin. You line him up as a big slot. You have him do things, you know, coming out of the backfield. You could line him up wide. There's many ways you could utilize a guy like that, but it was more of a chance for an upgrade without it being a problem. I think Tyler Conklin's an average tight end, and I think there's a chance that he could be an above average player with a legitimate quarterback. And I don't think that's, like, I said that in a tweet maybe a week or so ago, and I had people like, you're coping, the guy doesn't get in the end zone and this and that. If you look at some of his numbers in a really, really bad offense, one of the league's worst offenses in the NFL, he had 61 catches, which was 11th for tight ends, and his yards were 621 yards, which was 13th. So just outside the top 10. Obviously, again, he didn't get in the end zone, zero receiving touchdowns, but he was effective with Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian. I don't see why he can't be someone who is giving you top half of the league numbers in production with Aaron Rodgers when he was doing it just last year with Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, Trevor. Like, I don't get the disconnect with that.
Well, one thing to pay attention to is we only had 11 receiving touchdowns on the whole team combined.
Right.
Our quarterbacks only threw 11 touchdown passes. Garrett Wilson only had 3 touchdown passes. If any other fan base, if Miami Dolphin fans said Garrett Wilson is overrated because he only had 3 touchdowns, every Jet fan would go absolutely ballistic and said they didn't know what they were talking about, and they'd be furious. And they'd be screaming at that Miami fan that they're clueless. But you're going to sit there and say Conklin's not good because he doesn't have touchdown passes. We didn't throw touchdown passes. We all saw Conklin wide open in the end zone. We all saw Zach Wilson completely miss it. It was one of the most frustrating plays all season that we had. So you can look where to blame for the fact that Conklin didn't have touchdown pass receptions. But here's what I want to point out really clearly. That 600 plus yards, that 621 yards he had, made up for just about 20% of our total passing yards. So keeping that number in perspective, right? So knowing that we had one of the worst offenses in the NFL, we had no offensive line, no quarterback, we all know that. 20% of the quarterback's passes, what does that mean? That means if, name a quarterback, Matt, let's say Jordan Love. Is that just realistically, can Aaron Rodgers put up the kind of numbers that Jordan Love puts up
Yes.
with an offensive line? Okay, so Jordan Love threw for 4,600, 4,700 yards. 20% of that is 940 yards. So it's a ratio of getting 20% of the total passing yards for a team as a tight end. Conklin, if he kept that same ratio of 20%, would have 940 receiving yards. Any quarterback, and there's a lot, that threw for 4,000 yards, you're talking about 800 yards receiving for a tight end. There is no way that's a weakness, especially when you have a competent tight end in Jeremy Ruckert, who's done everything he was asked to do on the field, is a good blocker, and the Ozuma, who's just cut, they were sharing reps with him as well.
Yeah, I think phenomenal point. I want to pull up Rico's because he disagrees a little bit, which is fine, but I just want to talk through it. So he goes, I disagree with Matt, but only because I think who else besides Garrett and Brees could you depend on in the passing game? Conklin was one of a few viable options. Now we got Corley and Mike Williams. Fair, but I still think that Tyler Conklin is going to be probably fourth. He was third. He was third on the pecking order. If you want to say Garrett 1, Brees 2, Conklin 3 in the receiving game last year, I think that's probably fair. This year in 2024, I still think it's Garrett, Brees, and Mike Williams, but I put Conklin over Corley right now. So I think my guess is he's going to be roughly fourth on the team in targets.
I've seen this argument before. Like someone said to me, yeah, but he has a weakness and he won't get more yards than 600 because we have more targets now. That is not a knock on him, though. If Conklin gets less, if his ratio goes down and he only gets 15% of the quarterback passing yards, that's not necessarily bad for him. That's just good for the Jets. It means we have more competent receivers and the ball is being spread around more. That doesn't magically make Conklin a weakness. That means any good tight end we might have less than 20% of the yards simply because they're sharing the ball with more receivers.
There you go. Horatio, he says Kirk Cousins is a decent quarterback and Conklin wasn't lighting up the league. He had 3 touchdowns and 600 yards. That's true, but Isaiah was an average tight end, and 61 receptions was 9th in the NFL, and his 593 receiving yards was 14th. So he's been again, average. I'm talking like somewhere around the 16th best tight end in the league. I think it gives you somewhere between, can he be closer to top 10? I don't know if he gets in because there's a lot of talented tight ends in the NFL, but I don't think it's nuts to say that he could be we'll skew it and go top 12 tight end, somewhere around the 12th best tight end in football.
Yeah, I think again it goes to first of all, we have to be realistic. You're not going to have a star in every single position on the football team. Like every position is not going to be filled by a star. There are some positions on every football team that you're going to have to cope with the fact that we have average players because we don't have limitless salary cap and we don't have limitless first round picks. I mean, this is something every team, it's just a reality. We're not an all-star team. This is not John Madden, right? It's not a video game where we could put superstars at every position. The reality is, though, if you're not a star, that doesn't make you a weakness. Just because we don't have a star tight end doesn't mean it's a weakness for the team. 9th and 14th in the NFL, the top half of the NFL, is far from a weakness. It's just, you could say average, slightly better than average. You could argue anything you want. But the reality is it's not a weakness. If you're average or better, it's not a weakness. Just like Connor McGovern was never a weakness. He wasn't a star center. People didn't like him and wanted a star. We wanted better centers. But he was never a weakness because he was always in the top half of the NFL.
Yeah, and Rico, I don't think we're saying that. He says no one ever said he's a weakness. I just mean there are more explosive options ahead of him. I just think last year was an indication. I just don't think last year was an indication that he produced more with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I'm not saying that you said that you in particular, Rico, were saying that he was a weakness,
Right.
but I definitely saw people looking at tight end as a weakness online
Okay.
when talking about this New York Jets team and putting down Conklin, which if you want to upgrade it, again, if you wanted Brock Bowers to upgrade the tight end room, okay. Okay. Then
Right.
you put yourself in an elite spot in that group. I just don't look at the Jets tight end room and think it's horrible. I think it's fine. It's good enough, and they can get by with that because of their strengths at other areas on the roster.
Right. And if they would have, if the Jets would have taken Brock Bowers, I would not have been upset saying we didn't need one because because his potential would be converting average to potential star. Right. So I don't. It wasn't a pick I wanted personally, but I would not have been upset by it. I would have understood the pick. Just
Sure.
like when nobody considered cornerback a weakness when we took Sauce Gardner, but none of us are complaining that. It's okay to take a position where you have a player that's an average player and replace them with all pro.
Hader Ali is given his projections for Tyler Conklin. He says, got to keep in mind the Jets' passing attack and offense was, in all caps, historically bad with Aaron, wide receivers, and running backs. Tight end Conklin can, and then parentheses says, should produce around 70 receptions, 700 yards, 6 touchdowns, in my opinion. Do you think that is a fair expectation of what Tyler Conklin is going to do this season with the team?
I think Hyder is always very realistic, and he's always right on the money, and that's very realistic. And one of the things that can come in the way of it, and I almost hope it does, is maybe they're going to divide his time more with Jeremy Ruckert, which I personally want to see happen. So again, if his numbers go down to 450 yards, but Ruckert gets 400 yards, I'm not upset. I have no problem with it being two tight ends sharing, the 800 yards receiving that we can get from that position. So it's everything has to be taken with context, right? So it would be great if he gets those numbers, but if he doesn't, and it comes within that context, it's because Jeremy Ruckert gets his share, and finally we start to utilize him because I think he has shown a lot of flashes. I'm just as happy with that as well.
Do you think obviously this guy was from a couple years ago in his peak, we'll call it his peak, but do you think Robert Tonyan or Tyler Conklin is a better tight end?
Man, that's really hard. It's really hard to compare players that are in different situations.
But
I'm
the
just,
point was that with Aaron Rodgers, I don't think anyone's
mean,
going to say Robert Tonyan's a great tight end, but he had an 11 touchdown receiving season in 2020 because Aaron Rodgers came out and threw like 40 touchdowns that year.
but when you watch the players play, like, and you watch the film, Conklin is better. I mean, he can go out into the slot and make contested catches. I mean, there's film on this. We know he has a lot of athletic ability. So, if you want to go by numbers, I guess there's an argument. But if you want to go by what you see with your eyes, Conklin is a better tight end.
And I think the red zone offense is going to get better than what it was the last 2 years with Mike White, Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, not Tyler Conklin. Tyler Conklin will benefit from that. Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian. The Jets were unable to punch the ball into the end zone. I believe I think it was a 2-touchdown season he had 2 years ago. No, three touchdowns with the Jets in 2022. But I would think that he would be a beneficiary of playing with Rodgers. Not saying he's going to be an 1,000-yard tight end and watch out, you look for the numbers that Laporta put up last year or anything like that. But 750 yards, 7 touchdowns, something like that, which again is I would classify as an above average tight end season.
Yeah, I think the most importantly, I don't think it's the end of the year if we don't hold up that trophy when the year ends. I don't think the thing we're going to be saying is it's because we had bad tight end play. If we had a better tight end, this wouldn't have happened. I just don't think that's going to be the thing that stops us from getting where we want to go. I think the room is okay. I think there's nothing wrong with saying I wish we had a superstar in there, and if there was an opportunity to get one, to want one, that's fine. But I just don't see it as an issue for this football team. I feel completely comfortable with our tight end room, even down to Yeboah and you know and
Koontz.
Kuntz, and Kuntz as a development project. I even like that. I even like that part of the room is just 3 and 4. I think is good compared to as well as anyone in the league.
Randy says we don't need a star at tight end. We need quality and depth, which I believe is here, or which we have. The Jets are stacked with stars at important positions. JD put together a good squad. Now we have to perform. I think that's a really good way to look at this. Would it be nice to have a better tight end? Of course it would. Absolutely. But the Jets have, a really strong pass rush. They have really good cover corners. They have a stud wide receiver. They have a star running back. They have a star quarterback when he's healthy. Offensive line is massively improved. That, I think, that's enough for me. We're talking like minimal. The things the Jets need now is like minimal depth adjustments. Which, sure, adding more at tight end to me would be an adjustment of the depth. Adding someone who could maybe compete for a third or fourth wide receiver spot at this point would be more depth. A safety, an interior defensive lineman would just be kind of depth tweaks, which is, again, a good indication of where the roster is.
Absolutely. And then the number one thing at all, what I think is the number one thing we need is luck. We need to be healthy.
Yeah.
Like we've had a lot of bad luck. We all know that. It's been rough with the injuries. I think that might be the number one factor in how this year plays out.
I hope. I hope they are due for some good luck. Did you see they're changing over a lot of the staff in the sports science department?
Yeah.
Did you see those change? I'm assuming you're a fan of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to point fingers. I don't blame anyone for the injuries on the field except for the turf that we have to play on. I think that definitely has something to do with it. Not all,
Sure.
Not every injury, but it has something to do with it. I don't point fingers at them for the injuries that occur on the field. Although there could be an argument that they don't stretch properly, I don't know. I'm not behind the scenes. I'm not going to speculate on that. What I question is their ability to rehab guys, their ability to have guys ready to play without being re-injured, and their ability to adjust the timing and that, engage at the time. I kind of feel that other teams seem to be a lot more accurate and a lot faster on getting their players back on the field. And that's just a gut feel.
I agree with you. I'm with you on that. I did a video on this conversation this morning, and I came up with a list over the last 2 years of guys who ended the season on injured reserve. Do you want to hear this list? It's tough to listen back, but I think it's important and speaks to why there was probably a necessary change. So in 2023, I hope you're sitting down because it's a long one. Chuck Clark, Dwayne Brown, Connor McGovern, Aaron Rodgers, Wes Schweitzer, CJ Uzama, Elijah Vera Tucker, Perion Winfrey, and Al Woods all suffered season-ending injuries and missed significant time on injured reserve. Then you go back 1 year prior, 2020, not as bad, only 4 names, but 4 pretty important pieces: Mekhi Becton, George Fant, Breece Hall, Elijah Vera Tucker. So your left tackle, your right tackle, your right guard, who also played left tackle and right tackle, and your running back who was on his way to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. So they've been decimated by these kinds of injuries over the last 2 seasons.
I think it's kind of funny to hear you read off that list for the last 2 years and then think there are Jet fans complaining that we took an offensive line.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
It's like, listen to that list.
Right. I don't blame them at all for going that route as the insurance policy. Because again, 3 offensive linemen on IR in 2022, and how many? 1, 2, 3, 4 in 2023.
It's crazy.
Jeez, that's just, you cannot make that up. That's absolutely insane. Now here's an interesting a couple interesting points. All right, so let's do this. We'll start with Not Your Average Show with Jordan. He says Aaron Rodgers will win MVP, 45 touchdowns, close to 5,000 yards. Go Jets. Our tight end room is very good. Do you see that kind of season for Aaron Rodgers in his return? I'm talking like 45 touchdowns and 5,000 yards. Do you see that kind of return?
I'm not being negative at all when I say this, but so hear me out. I'm going to say no, but I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying no because I don't think that we're going to open up our offense that way, and I don't think that that's what we're been building to do, and that's the only reason. I'm not saying he's not capable of it in the right situation. I just think that we're going to run the ball too much for that, and we're going to be more of a ground and pound, eat up the clock, keep the defense off the field, make the defense even more effective that way. Control the line of scrimmage, control ball possession, and then obviously when he has to pass and make plays, he will, and I think he's going to be very efficient. He's going to have a great year. I just don't know if it's going to be that kind of volume.
I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be that kind of volume. I think there'll be games where he's going to have, like, if he's playing a full 17 season, let's say, or most of the year, he's going to have some games where he's throwing 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. But I think there's also going to be some games where he's only throwing the ball 22 times because Breece Hall's running for 150 yards and the defense is playing unbelievable. So way too early prediction, subject to change. I think a little over 4,000 yards and closer to like 30 touchdowns, which is still phenomenal. That's great. That is more than enough. I'd be thrilled with that. If he goes for 5,000 and 4,500 yards, fantastic. We every one of us would sign up for that. That would be great. But I don't think it's going to be that much. Like I said, I think closer to 30 touchdowns, plus or minus a couple, and more around 4,000 yards.
Yeah, the number I would look at and be more happy with is around close or at 70% completion ratio, over 100 average rating, like 102 quarterback rating on average for the course of the season, and a nice touchdown to interception percent, like 33-7 in
Yeah.
touchdowns to intercept. To me, that would be the dream season, and that would be enough for us to talk about Super Bowl contention.
Randy chimes in with an interesting question. He says, if we don't succeed, then it's not because of a lack of talent. Head coach may not have the experience. So I think what Randy's asking is, if the Jets don't have a successful season this year, do you see them moving on from Robert Saleh but keeping Joe Douglas?
It's very possible. It's a big year. I mean, if we lose the first game in the playoffs and there's some blatant complaints that were obvious that was coaching goose, I could see it happen. There's high expectations for Salah. I'm not decided on him. So a lot of people, it's crazy to me, hope that he gets fired. I don't think it's about hope he gets fired. I think if we're fans, we should be hoping we win the Super Bowl, which would mean he's not going to get fired, and that would be great. I think that if he fails to get whatever Woody Johnson and the management's criteria is of what the expectations should be for this team based on if we stay healthy, depending on how the season rolls out, and that's how you judge a coach. Does he meet the expectations? And I think that if we stay healthy, the expectations are going to be pretty high. And even though it's the first year, if we make the playoffs, I think there's going to be pressure for him to win a game, go deep. And if we lose, it better not be because of, a clear indication that he wasn't ready from a coaching perspective, because this is year 4 for him. So there's no more excuses about being a young coach.
Yeah, you're right. There is a lot of pressure on both these guys. I usually don't love the idea of messing up the timeline and like keeping the GM and firing the coach, or keeping the coach and firing the GM and whatnot. So that's probably not my preference, but again, it's all kind of circumstantial. If it plays out the way that you just described, yes, it's on the table. I think we kind of have to wait and see how this season goes. But if it's not because of lack of talent, but in-game decisions, then yeah, we could probably have that conversation in January. Rico, the pup, this comment killed me. I thought it was funny. He goes, what are the sports science department doing? Even slapping a Band-Aid on a player and giving them an orange slice? It seems that way with some of these injuries, right? With everyone's ending up on season-ending IR.
Yeah, I think maybe the focus needs to be less on the computers and the science and and all the sophisticated healing stuff, and maybe the focus needed to be more back to the old-fashioned way of doing it before we seem to get players injured every other play, and that was the thing we were told our whole lives before we did anything active, and that's stretching.
Yeah,
And I'm just wondering if that was an issue for our team.
it could be. It absolutely could be. I like this prediction though from Horatio. Brees Hall, 2,000 all-purpose yards. Do you see that one coming to fruition?
Oh, definitely. I mean, Brees was right around 1,600 on one of the worst offenses in the history of football. We had a 5-game run where it felt like we didn't get a first down at all. I mean, it was pretty
Yeah.
much 1, 2, 3 and out for every drive for 5 games in a row. And for him to have gotten beat up in the beginning the way he and had to make some adjustments and come around the second half of the year. Now you got all the fixes to the offensive line. I think Brees has found his rhythm and totally has gotten over the injury. If you look at the rate and the run he was on from like week 9 to the end of last season, I would be sorely disappointed if he didn't get over 2,000 all-purpose yards. I would be start pushing and thinking 2,500.
Oh, baby, you're speaking my language. I'm going to say around 1,400 rushing yards and then like 750 receiving yards for Brees, which would go well over at that point. I think after this year, I think he's going to be the consensus RB2 behind Christian McCaffrey. That's my prediction for him this season.
If I had to predict and guess, 2,500 is my dream goal.
Sure.
If I had to predict, I would say 2,250 to 2,300 yards all purpose.
I love it. NFL record, by the way, is around 2,700 all-purpose yards. That's the goal. Then that is the goal to break. I love it. Yeti says, Jeremy, I'm on the way to Portillo's. I'll go live if you guys are still live.
I don't know. I don't know what that means.
Okay, I thought maybe it was an inside joke with you guys. I was like,
I see. So Portillo's is a Chicago style place. They have Italian beef sandwiches.
Okay.
And they were a famous place in Chicago that started opening locations, and they opened one in Tucson. So that's where he's from. So he's going to go to Portillo's and try a true Chicago-style Italian beef sandwich. And I think when he says go live, he means he's going to review it live. He's going to go on and eat it and review it live for people who want to watch and what have you.
Incredible.
This is what I bring out of people. This is what
you're the food guy, man. That's it. You're the food guy. You're not usually. Are you a deep dish pizza guy or not really?
Not as a go-to my favorite style of pizza, but I'm not a hater. When I'm in Chicago, I'm definitely down, man. It's just a different kind of thing. It's not lunch. It's not grabbing a slice. It's sitting down with a knife and fork and eating a meal. It's delicious, but it's just an argument of whether you want to compare it to, the pizza we're accustomed to in New York. And to me, it's a different product completely. So I don't get into the whole pizza war because I'm a food lover, not a food hater.
There you go. I think that's a fair way to look at it. It's just very different. I had it for the first time a couple of years ago. When I was in Chicago 2 summers ago, and it was good, but it's just different. That's not the pizza experience that we're used to. So not my personal preference. I liked it and I'm glad that I tried it, but I'm more of the traditional slice kind of guy than something like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. We got time for a couple more in here before we end the show. Guys, if you're hanging out with us, thank you so much. Please leave a like on the video. That would really help us out. We appreciate that. Hater goes, if/when Rodgers throws for 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns, along with the top 5 defense, he will shock the NFL, in my opinion. Let's effing go. That's enough. To me, I think that would be more than enough. If the Jets are getting 35 passing touchdowns and have a top 5, defense, that's enough for them to be a contender, no?
I think 2 out of the 3 are super easy. Like not even will I say, oh, that's realistic. I'll say easy. 4,000 plus yards, easy. If he's healthy, no problem seeing that. No problem seeing the I didn't see that third thing. The top 5 defense. I think we're going to be a top 3 defense. I think Haason Reddick is going to bring us to another level. I think people don't even fully understand that yet. I know Huff had a lot of sacks, but you have to understand Haason Reddick is a much fuller, more complete edge. So I think he's going to take us to new heights. And the 35 touchdowns we were saying, we could see 32, 33. So 35 might be a tiny bit higher than we expect. So we could definitely say realistic for sure. It's realistic. It's not impossible he's going to throw the 35 touchdowns.
Yeah, it definitely isn't. We got, okay, this is a good one for you, Jeremy. Horatio says, I haven't had Pizza Hut in 20 years. Is it actually good?
No, like a lot of places, it went downhill. So when Pizza Hut first was opening up their standalone restaurants, even in New York, people were going. We were going as teenagers, and it was very different. They were making them fresh in pans. They were using real ingredients. And then what happens to every corporate kind of fast food thing happens. Now, as Howard Stern would say, do we really want to even call it pizza? I certainly won't.
No, yeah, it's not good. For me, I think it's more like that's more nostalgic for like for me, my childhood, like late 90s, early 2000s, like Pizza Hut, Taco Bell. Like to me, that's like nostalgia more than anything. If you're in New York, like I don't know why you would choose a chain place like Domino's or Pizza Hut or a place like that over just going to your local pizza parlor.
We did it as kids in Brooklyn because we're kids, we're sold by the marketing. But here's the real reason we did it. Domino's Pizza was ordered by us as kids because they started their marketing campaign. What they originally were was they would charge the same price as a regular large fry as a good Brooklyn pizza place, but they would put like all 9 toppings on.
Okay.
So basically, it was so we couldn't afford to get a kitchen sink type pie at a pizza place. It was like at a time where pies were $6, it would make the pizza $17. But at Domino's for $8, you get a pie with everything. They used to call it like a super destroyer. So I remember a lot of us would get it because of that. We would get it because we can get all the toppings, and that's what we could afford. And it was also a little bit better than it is today.
There
Not
you
much
go.
better, but
Not much, but a little bit. Rico goes, being a little kid and getting that Pizza Hut personal pan pizza was like a rite of passage. If that's not the truth, right? That one. Let's close
bread.
with the cheesy bread. Absolutely.
The cheesy bread.
Cheesy bread's good. We'll close with this Jets question from Rico. He says, did anyone else catch the clip the Jets posted of Will McDonald? He looks like he's bulked up a bit. Excited to see what he does this season. Jeremy, your loose expectations for year 2, Will McDonald.
Man, I hope he gets the reps. I mean, he's obviously the third on the totem pole with JJ and Reddick, but I think he's in line to get a lot more reps. I would expect him to go double-digit sacks. I think a lot of people aren't really understanding that when you look at the reps he had last year and the opportunity and the situation of the games, that 3.5 sacks was actually pretty good. Also, his win rate was almost as high as Huff's. So I expect if he gets more reps, we're going to see a player who has a real opportunity to get double-digit sacks, like 10, 11 sacks. I think it's possible, and I think that's the stretch. I think very realistic expectation would be at least 8 to 9 sacks.
I'm gonna go. He's gonna play 40 to 45% of snaps and finish with. I'll go a little on the conservative side. I'll go 6 sacks this year from him. He has the potential to be a double-digit sack guy. I don't know, as you mentioned, the reps. I don't know if he's going to get the reps. I think he'll be good in a rotational role. I think we will see a big improvement from him. I don't know if he's going to get the reps to be a 10-plus sack guy. Not saying he doesn't have the talent to, because I think he does.
That'll be his biggest enemy, right? I mean, the biggest stopper is the reps.
Absolutely. So, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us for another episode of Reality Check. Please make sure to subscribe to the Talkin' Jets channel, like the video, share with a friend, follow along with Jeremy's channel and my channel as well. We'll be back next Thursday breaking down another topic. For now, I'm Matt. He's Jeremy, and we'll catch you next time.
Later, guys.